Lord Sumption, former Supreme Court Justice, who is on the line. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
We heard from the police minister an hour ago. People should ring in if they see people breaking the law. We have just heard from Martin Hewitt that that is not necessarily damaging to policing. They can cope with that. They can cope with the calls in a practical way, but also more widely, we can cope as a society with that happening. Can we?
Well, I think that I agree with the last speaker that we are a long way from a Stasi-style surveillance state, and that's why these particular regulations are unenforceable. They would only be enforceable with an army of snoopers and informers, and that is the kind of thing that the police rightly abhor and that the rest of the public rightly abhor. The whole problem about this is that it is pointless, for the reason I've just given. It is arbitrary, and it's unnecessary. It's arbitrary because we will still be allowed to mix with much larger numbers of people in the workplace, in schools, in public transport, in shops, in supermarkets, in the streets. It's unnecessary because the recent upsurge in infections is driven by younger people under 50. There is nothing wrong with infection spreading among people under 50.
Well,
with a handful of exceptions,
let me
put you only minor symptoms or none at all.
Let me put you what scientists tell us when we put those things to them. Number one, that in the workplace and in schools, etc., it is far less likely that the virus is passed on than happens at home in social situations. And number two, that actually it is inevitable, and we've been told this repeatedly on the programme of scientists, inevitable that if there is widespread infection among the broader community, it will go to older people as well.
Now, let me look at that last point. At the moment, the position is that the infections are rising rapidly, but hospitalisations and deaths have hardly moved, at any rate in the UK, and only very slightly in other countries. Now, leaving aside the rather special problem of care homes, older and more vulnerable people can shelter themselves if they want to. But many older and more vulnerable people will not want to, and that is their choice. I commend to you, and to all those who take a different view, the article written in The Telegraph by Sally Vickers yesterday. She is 70 and says that the risk of shortening her life matters a great deal less to her than losing the prospect of seeing her friends and grandchildren. Why should she not be allowed to make that choice if she wishes to? Why should the government take the choice out of her hands and prevent her from doing it? The government's message that younger people should shun the old for fear of becoming the agents of their death is an appalling violation of basic human instincts.
Yes, but you're accepting then that it is at least possible that it is passed from young people to old, and that is what the scientists tell us is likely to happen, and they want...
Of course it's possible, but it'll only happen so far as the old do not shelter themselves, and the old are entitled not to shelter themselves if they don't wish to. If you are over 70, you can, and I have friends who do this, you can shut yourself in your house, you can make sure that that someone else does your shopping for you and all of that. On the other hand, many people are perfectly happy to take the risk, like Sally Vickers, like me. I'm a year or two older than she is. And that is a choice that we are entitled to make.
It's not just the old, though, is it? It's much wider than that. Right across the community, people who are vulnerable to this virus and vulnerable to COVID-19, if it is very widespread in the community, will have to, well, really, if they want to stay alive, have very little choice to shut themselves off. And that is an unfair imposition on them, isn't it?
No, it's not, because it seems to me that if you are particularly vulnerable, there is absolutely nothing wrong with your taking special measures that are not expected of the rest of the community who are a great deal less vulnerable. This idea that you need a one-size-fits-all measure like the government's regulations, when in fact it's a great deal more efficient and as well as more humane for people to make their own decisions in the light of their own circumstances and the circumstances of the people around them, that is a great deal more efficient as well as a great deal more consistent with the basic humanity of individuals.
Would you encourage people, if they feel strongly, as you do, to flout these laws?
I would say that people should make their own decisions in the light of their own health, and that the law should be a secondary consideration for them.
Lord Sumption, thank you very much.